appearance is important. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. So when you go out there on stage, you want to make sure that you look your best, that everything is where it should be, that when people look at you, they see a speaker who has their act together. How many people were looking at me? Now, how many people were looking at my collar? Probably a lot of you were looking at the collar because sticking up didn't look right. And it probably took all of your attention away from what I was saying. In fact, since I had my collar out like that, you probably didn't believe a word that I was saying. Appearance is important. If you go out on stage and you have your collar out like that, people aren't going to pay attention to what you're saying. They're just going to wonder why you don't fix your collar. So today I want to talk about the importance of appearance and what you can do to get that professional looking appearance when you're out on stage. It isn't that difficult. Just a few things you need to do, like fixing your collar. We'll talk about how to make sure that your collar is where it should be when you go out on stage. Because this actually happened to me. I was giving a speech, went out there, and the whole time my collar was sticking out, just like you saw it a few seconds ago. After the speech, people said, "Good speech, very nice." And one person said, "It's a good speech, but you want to be aware of your appearance." Well, I had no idea what the heck this person was talking about. I thought he had a perfectly decent appearance. When I watched the video, that's when I saw the collar problem. So, little things, little tiny things, can upset and derail a perfectly good speech. We have to be aware of these things. We go out on stage, how do we look? Do we look? We know what the heck we're doing? Or do we look like we just got out of bed and staggered over to the stage 5 or 6 minutes ago? It's really important because it's that first impression. As I said several months ago, it takes 30 seconds for the audience to make that first impression. And if the first thing they see is a collar out, or hair sticking straight up, or a person who just looks like they don't know what's going on, the audience isn't going to pay attention to what you have to say. No matter how good your speech is, the audience is not going to focus on it. So you need to make sure that you look good when you go out on stage. Some of the things are obviously the collar, which you talked about, the hair, just making sure all those things are in place. You don't want to make a big deal about it. You want it to be subtle, but you still want to have that last moment check before you go out on stage and are out in front of everyone. Another important thing is how you stand. We'll spend quite a bit of time today talking about stance, talking about how the stance works, talking about how to look like you're ready to speak, like you're comfortable. And positioning. How you position yourself before your speech is very important. Give some ideas about what to do if you're in the audience before your speech, or backstage. In a previous show, we talked about some things to do to relax yourself right before going out on stage. Today I want to talk about a few things to get yourself ready right before you go out on stage. Appearance does matter, and you never get a second chance to make that all-important first impression. So today, you will learn how to take care of your appearance before you go on the stage. Some different ideas about how to make sure that when you stand up there you look professional and poised and confident. And you learn all of those things right now. Wouldn't it be great if right before you're ready to go out on stage, you could just kind of pull over a big full-length mirror and check yourself out, just to make sure you look absolutely perfect when you got on that stage. So you're ready to go out on stage, you just pull over that full-length mirror, get it right there. Okay, check everything out. Okay, collar good, hair back, eyes ready to go. Yes, I think that will do. Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it would be wonderful. We could just pull over a full-length mirror right before we're ready to go out on stage, check ourselves out, and make sure that everything is doing what it should when we go out there on stage. Unfortunately, we can't do that. There are no full-length mirrors when we get out on stage. And if you try to drag one of these babies with you before you go on stage, well, you'll definitely get a reputation. But not a reputation as a great speaker. You get a reputation as the crazy person who drags a mirror around everywhere he goes. No, that won't do. So you have to do something else before you go out on stage. But it's very important to know what you look like. The thing I found right before going out on stage is I don't know what I look like. I hope people are telling me that, hey, you look great there, go for it. But are they really being honest? You don't know. So you do need a little bit of protection. So what I do before I go out on stage, let's say I was having that collar problem we talked about before. Okay, here I go, ready to go out on stage. Nobody has said anything to me about this before, of course. They're kind of waiting to see if what's going to happen when I get out there. So I'm ready to go out on stage, no problem. Yeah. Collar's off, okay. And all right, ready to go. What was all that? Well, the great thing is the audience, you really don't know. You don't see anything. Not a big deal. Not noticeable. Not a big focus of attention, but what I have, of course, is a mirror. Little tiny mirror that I can hold in my hand. A hand mirror. And the great thing about it is I can just check that collar right before I go out on stage and make sure the hair is okay, and then put it away. Doesn't bother the audience. It's not like a big, huge, regular, full-length mirror. I mean, it's not going to distract people. Most people aren't even going to notice it. But it does give you that last chance to make a few corrections just before you go out on stage. Because you really need to make sure that your collar isn't off or your hair isn't off. Now, don't go crazy about it. Don't just start saying, checking out and say, whoa, hey, you're looking pretty good there. Yeah. Ooh, hey. Yeah, hey. Look at that hand there. Don't go crazy about it. You'll discover a new word, narcissistic, or narcissism. And if you want to look it up, it's N-A-R-C-I something. Just type what it sounds like into Google, and Google will probably correct you and let you know you're wrong in spelling it and tell you the right way to spell it. But the idea is, you don't want to go out there on stage looking really like, hey, it's all about me. Boy, am I beautiful out there. Boy, oh, yeah, baby. It's not the point. That's not the point at all. The point is to make sure before you go out on stage that your collar is down, that your hair is neat, and that your eyeglasses, if you have them, are in a decent position. But you want to make sure and check on all things. You can spend a long time doing this. Just a quick check. Collar, hair, okay, done. That's all you need. All you need. Because then you can check on things and make sure everything is where it should be. So when you get out there, you do your best, you look your best, you sound your best. So that's just a simple thing you can do. Small hand mirror. And it has to be small. It has to fit in the palm of your hand. So you can just find a small, like a round mirror. If you use a rectangular mirror, that's fine. Just make sure it's small. It can sit in the palm of your hand so the audience doesn't see it. Oh, they'll probably know what you're doing, but you don't want to distract them. Remember, you can't pull out a full-length mirror right before you go out on stage. Check yourself out. But if you just have a small palm mirror, right before you go out, check a few things over, make sure everything looks good. You'll go out there, you'll look great, and once you're looking great, the audience will pay attention to your words and pay attention to what you're saying. So go out there, look great, and also sound great. When you're speaking, you don't want to have your feet together. You have your feet together, it can cause problems. One thing is you could tip over. Now, maybe if you're in the military, it's okay to have your feet together like that for a long time, but if you're giving a 5-minute speech or a 10-minute speech or a 15-minute speech, having your feet together like this is just going to be tiring. So you want to have your feet separate, about shoulder width apart. So however wide your shoulders are, your feet should be pretty much that wide on the floor. This will give you a little bit of give, a little bit of flexibility, and it'll make sure that if you do move from side to side that you're okay, that you aren't going to tip over, you aren't going to fall over. Something that newer speakers do when they get a little bit nervous is sometimes their feet tend to move behind or in front or cross in some way, and that can just cause problems. If you have your feet in, say, this position and you fall over, that could hurt. That could do a lot of damage. So don't do this. It's easy to get into that habit, just kind of balancing on one foot, but it creates problems. People start looking at you doing the two-step up there much more than they're actually listening to your speech. So make sure that you have both feet on the floor. And when you get that urge to cross your feet, don't, because it puts a lot of stress on this foot, for one thing, and the other is you could fall over. And the other thing to think about when you have your feet up there is even if you have your feet up on the floor, something that beginning speakers can do is they put one foot up a little bit. Maybe they kind of angle back a little bit to the side. So they're talking the whole time they have that foot up. Now, as mentioned, that puts a lot of stress on this foot over here because it has to take all the weight. And the other problem is that it takes attention away from your speech. Somebody's up there twiddling their feet up there. People are going to tend to watch that foot much more than they're going to tend to actually watch what's going on. So be careful. Your feet can kind of pop up if you don't watch them. Keep them down on the ground. Also be careful about this, the kind of the rocking back and forth. Side that can cause a whole new problem if you get off balance. And, as mentioned, it just puts the whole body into all sorts of stresses that you really don't want to have. So feet shoulder width apart and flat on the floor. You may not think this is a big deal, but think if you're in a situation where you're on stage, and people in the first 5 or 6 rows may see your feet very, very well. That may be the first thing they see when you come out on stage is your feet, and then they look up. And if your feet are doing all this sort of thing back there, they may decide that this isn't really that serious a speaker. This is somebody who doesn't know quite what they're doing, or who's afraid other people will find out they don't know what they're doing, and they'll just stop listening to you. It only takes 30 seconds to make up their mind about you. And if they see your feet doing strange things, they may make up their mind in the definitely against column. So keep your feet flat on the floor, about shoulder width apart. Allows you a little flexibility and allows you to be a stable, confident, and in control speaker when you get out on stage. And the final point is to make sure that you're always ready to speak. That may not seem like a big deal. You figure you can just get up wherever you are and trudge over to the lectern and get up there and get behind the lectern and stand on the podium if there's a podium. Start speaking. No big deal. The thing is, you don't make as good an entrance if you're like this, and then suddenly somebody calls out your name and boop, there you are. Pop right up and over to the lectern. You don't make that good an entrance. And if you're sitting down and there are people in your way and you can't get past them, or your chair is stuck, or you're kind of hunched over, you got to kind of get around some people to get there to the front, and then you stand up, kind of out of breath, tired, you definitely don't make that good an entrance. So what you want to do, if you can, is stand up beforehand. So before they call you, you're sitting down there in the audience, get up, go over to the side, and wait. And once your turn to come on, come out, there you are. You want to do that to be ready to go out on stage so you're fully prepared, so you're fully ready. Now, it's not a big deal if you're already sitting there in the wings waiting to go on. If you're sitting out there waiting to go on, they've got a stage prepared for you, great. Sometimes there is no stage, and you just sit in the audience until it's time to come up. Even then, you want to make sure you get up there, you want to make sure you're ready and prepared to go on. If you've ever been to a speech contest at Toastmasters International, what you'll notice is the contestants, right before they're ready to speak, are standing right there. They're ready to go. If there aren't any backstage to the stage, they're off stage, but they're standing up, they're prepared, got their mic on, they're already ready to go to get up on that stage. They aren't sitting out there in the audience waiting for someone to call them up. They aren't way in the back of the room, sitting in the audience, trying to get down to the front of the room when they're called up. They're ready to go. They're waiting. There's a reason for that. Because if you're having a contest and somebody has to get past all the other people and get all the way up to the front, that wastes a lot of time. Wastes a lot of the audience's time. So you don't want to do that in a contest. You want to make sure that person's right there, ready to go. So when you're ready to call, and the next contestant is Tim Wilson. Up comes Tim Wilson, right there. Boom, ready to go. No, excuse me, pardon me, excuse me, pardon, excuse me, pardon me. Sorry, pardon me, excuse me, just trying to get the stage here. Pardon, excuse. None of that. Because that really doesn't give that good an impression. If the speaker spends about 15 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute, pardon me, excuse me, trying to, sorry, excuse me, ma'am, sir, pardon, could I just step, thank you. Before they're even on the stage, if that's the first impression of the speaker, not going to be good. So make sure, sitting there in the audience, before, I'll say it again, it's time for you to come up. You're right there ready to go out on stage, so they call. And please join me in welcoming Tim Wilson. Out you step on stage, ready to go, ready to make things happen. If you just do that little thing, right before you go on, you'll give a very good first impression to your audience. And so those are the three things you have to be aware of when you go out on stage. One very important thing to be aware of is how you look, how you appear. And while it could be great and wonderful, if you could just pull a big full-length mirror out, check yourself out, it doesn't work like that. When you get out there on stage, you have to look your best. You have to look the way you should look. Just having a little mirror handy, and just check yourself out, make sure everything's good, and then put it right back. Simple, it's easy. And make sure you look your best when you get out on stage. And be aware of your feet. Quite often people come out there on stage and they do things to their feet that can cause them to fall over. It happens. But it doesn't need to happen to you. Not if you make sure your feet are shoulder width apart. Comfortable. And be careful about crossing your legs when you go out there on stage. Cross your legs and you can have all sorts of problems. The final thing we talked about was making sure that when you get up and give your speech that you're ready. If you're sitting there back in the audience and you have to get all the way to the stage and you got to kind of move or past people, there's a problem. You don't want that to happen. You want to make sure you're ready, planted, you're set, get out on stage. When they announce you, out you come. Because looks are important. The first thing a person notices is how you look. And like it or not, people will make judgments about you as a speaker and how well you do as a speaker just based on the way you look. If you don't look like you know what you're doing, people will assume you don't know what you're doing. So you want to make sure at all times you look like you know what's going on. And while that might seem a little bit unfair that people are judging you so well, you can use it to your advantage. Since people are so concerned with how you look, and they use that to base on whether or not they'll even listen to you, you can get a huge jump in your speech just by looking like you know what you're doing out there. Just taking a little bit of effort to make sure you're prepared, ready to go, that your hair is in place, that your collar is where it should be. It'll have a huge effect on the effect of your speech for your audience. Because as speakers, we always have to be aware of the audience. Everything we do up here on stage is for the audience. So if you're getting up there on stage and your whole purpose is just to make sure you really look good because you want to look good, it's not enough. The audience has to get something out of your speech. So looking good won't replace a bad speech. Even if you look great, if your speech isn't that interesting, doesn't pull people in, doesn't hook people, doesn't have a beginning, middle, ending that really gets people going and and gets them thinking, what's that next step I need to do? That's not going to work. But on the other hand, if you have a really great speech, and just because you don't quite look prepared or ready when you go out there on stage, speech doesn't do as well as it should, that's just wasting a perfectly good opportunity, an easy opportunity to really come off as a great, polished speaker. And the neat thing about this is you don't need to have been a speaker for that long. You may be brand new to public speaking, never done it before. First audience you get out there in front. If you make sure that you look presentable, make sure that your feet are about shoulder width apart and planted firmly on the floor, and if you get up a little bit before they introduce you to make sure that you get onto that stage smoothly and look good, you're actually ahead of the game in being a speaker. Haven't said a word, and already people are thinking, all right, I'm ready for this person. This person knows what's going on. So remember, your speech begins before you get out there on stage. People are always judging you as a speaker. They judge you from the moment they know you're speaking. So you always want to be presentable. You always want to look good. Always want to make sure you have your best face, your best look, and you're all ready for the show.